Daddy, what you leave behind for me. Spring is almost here. Elijah will be 24. Easter is at the epicenter of this season, symbolic on so many levels. Even in Dante's Divine Comedy, things happen around Easter. Dante Alighieri. Seems like he's shown up recently. I'd used the word limbo in conversation, and I'd stopped myself, almost subconsciously. I then backtracked, and an alternate word, dormancy, fell in its place. The word limbo, the meaning, its ethos, comes to me from the Divine Comedy. It's the very first circle of hell, the Inferno, comprising of these concentric circles. The folks we find in Limbo, they're an interesting bunch, to say the least. It's not such a bad place. There's no hellfires burning. I've heard it described as the fields of Elysium by one Dante scholar. We sometimes forget that Dante is the author of the Divine Comedy, and so everything in there, its contents, its characters, its layout, it's all his production. Although because it reads as a first-person narrative, you get confused at times. Dante the Pilgrim himself, feeling these emotions, these bonds, these associations with the sinners, sometimes deeply affected by their situation. The Divine Comedy starts off with Dante. He's lost in this dark wood, desperately in need of help. One of the best descriptions I've heard is that he's frozen with fear. He cannot take a step forward, backward, sideways. He's not sure if that might be his last. And so he's praying to the Virgin Mary. And this Roman poet, Virgil, appears to Dante, who lived almost 1400 years before Dante's time. Virgil is famous for this epic poem that he'd written. Among other things, the poem titled The Aeneid. It's written in Latin, this legendary story of Aeneas, a Trojan warrior, who fled after the Battle of Troy. We know who else has written about the Trojan War, this Greek poet Homer, who really is from the beginning of literary history. Even guys like Socrates, Plato, they were heavily influenced by the Homeric epics, the Iliad, the Odyssey. I guess it's good to point out that there's a pattern developing. Everybody rides on coattails. We have Virgil, whose work is greatly influenced by Homer. And then we have Dante, who's influenced by both Homer and Virgil. And although the Divine Comedy is not Trojan War-centric, there are many references to the Homeric epics and the Aeneid. So we have Virgil and Dante walking through the first circle of hell. Dante is still in his body, and everybody else, they appear as shadows. They are shades because death has stripped them of their body. And because of this, Dante is attracting a lot of attention. Everybody can see he's the only one not dead in here. And so many of them are reaching out, expressing a desire to talk to him. But Virgil warns Dante not to engage. And so they've reached the first circle of hell, and Dante asks Virgil, who are these guys? He finds out these are the non-sinners. They're here because they've not been baptized. Non-Catholics, mainly pagans, they have no chance of getting any further, and so they live here in desire without hope. One could say there's nothing more tragic than to live in desire without hope. All of the sinners in Dante's Inferno, they have this opportunity for continuity. Depending on the sin, it could take centuries. But eventually, they have this opportunity to ride out this time in suffering and then move through purgatory into paradise, finally breaking on through to the other side. This chance for rebirth back into the human body. But that option is not available to the souls in limbo. And although they don't live with pain and suffering, no hope of getting back into a body, their fate appears sealed. Here's the best part of the story. Virgil, who's guiding Dante through hell, is also a pagan, so a permanent resident of Limbo. As they're walking by, a group of shades call out to Virgil. Virgil excuses himself from Dante and goes to confer with them. And as Dante is watching these folks talking, he recognizes them as this elite group of poets, Homer, Horace, Ovid, Lucan, and Virgil with them. They smile and they wave out to Dante to join them. And this beautiful moment in the poem, Dante, as he's walking towards them, he's overcome with pride, vanity kicking in. He's thinking to himself, I've made it. I've truly arrived. Here I am, ready to take my rightful place as the sixth member of this tribe. Although he knows that he'd never be in their condition, their position. He is baptized. He'll pass through Limbo. And so we're left to wonder, if Dante had so much respect for these guys, how come he placed them in Limbo? Who knows? All we can do is speculate. Some scholars say this is the great tragedy in the Divine Comedy. It's filled with these infernal ironies.